Okay, so one of the things that we're doing for this month-long movie type thing is we're going through all of the Simpsons Treehouse of Horror episodes and talking about them because we like them. So we've done the first 5, and we're basically going to do blocks of 5 episodes at a time since there's 26 of them. So the first one we have is from season 2. The segments are Bad Dream House, Hungry Are the Damned, and The Raven. Actually, should we explain how it works, or
like, I mean, what? Like, it's an anthology basically of stories.
Yeah,
okay, if you're not weren't completely born under a rock and haven't seen any of The Simpsons, every year since season 2, they did a episode for Halloween called The Treehouse of Horror, which is basically 3 episodes that are not canon at all. And it's just like an anthology horror movie. Every year we have a different one. And anything you have to add to that?
No, I think it's good. Okay, so the first one, the 3 segments are Bad Dream House, Hungry Are the Damned, and The Raven. Now, The Raven is an easy one to explain. They basically do, they do The Raven with, Simpsons characters. Homer as the narrator. The difference being that when he's not directly speaking, it's James Earl Jones doing the voice.
He's the narrator.
Bart is the Raven. Marge is a picture on the wall as Lenore. I think one of the best bits of that was the first time he says, quote the Raven, Bart jumps in with, eat my shorts.
Which is interesting. My freshman English teacher used that to teach with. We read it and then she showed us, and I'm like, okay. It's very interesting.
Yeah, it's great, it's, usual good Simpsons work, especially for the time. Bad Dream House was basically the Simpsons move into a new house that's haunted, cursed, whatever you want to say. There's just, weird things happen, like, blood on the walls and, your usual horror house type stuff. They go down to the basement and see a bunch of Indian graves. When weirdly one of them said Mahatma Gandhi, some of them said Tonto, Geronimo, Not So Crazy Horse, those I all got, but Gandhi kind of confused me. And eventually they they talk to the house and are like, look, couldn't we just live here and coexist? He's like, give me a moment to think, and they walk out and it just implodes on itself. It's like it would rather die than live with us. The last one was Hungry Are the Damned. I don't remember this one as well.
That was with Kang and Kodos. They got abducted by the aliens.
Right.
And they just start feeding them, and Lisa starts to get a little suspicious. So she goes down into their little lair or whatever in the kitchen, and she finds a book that says how to cook humans. And then she brings it to them and confronts them about it, and they blow dust off of it and says how to cook 4 humans. They blow dust again, and it says how to cook 40 humans. And they blow dust off of it again, and it says how to cook 40 humans. So basically, they were taking them to their planet or whatever, so they would be treated like kings and queens and just live in luxury forever. But because Lisa was suspicious of them and couldn't trust them, they took them back.
Yeah.
So.
And that launched the, Kodos and...
Kang and Kodos.
Kang and Kodos, who, that was their debut, wasn't it?
Mm-hmm.
And they have been in every Treehouse of Horror since. Usually as just a bit part, just laughing at whatever's happening.
Well, they've had other appearances where they were in the main story.
Yeah, it's just most of what I saw in the first 5 were just them laughing. But by the way, she has seen all of these because she grew up watching The Simpsons. I did not. I've only seen a couple of these prior to us doing this. So, alright, so the second one, Treehouse of Horror 2, the segments were The Monkey's Paw, The Bart Zone, and If I Only Had a Brain. The Monkey's Paw is a pretty simple adaptation of the Monkey's Paw, myth, where, they make wishes and, some of them wish for stupid things, some of them wish for good things that turn out to be horrible. Like, Maggie makes a wish, and this, super rich, fancy car comes up, and a guy has on a pillow a new pacifier, and that's it. I think Lisa wishes for world peace, and as a result, the aliens come and take over. What did Bart wish for?
For them to be rich and famous.
Yeah, Bart wished them to be rich and famous, and everyone hated them because they were so famous. And they were sellout hacks. So that one was good. The Bart Zone was... that one...
That's the one where Bart had the mind powers or whatever, and
oh, right.
Everybody was scared of him. Anything that, if you made it mad, he would do stuff to you.
Yeah, like... A lot of these are inspired by the Twilight Zone, so I recognize the core story, but I just hadn't seen this, variant of it. So yeah, and they, the conceit of this one was that they all ate too much candy and had nightmares, and this was Bart's nightmare, and it became that way because at the end they they tell Homer, maybe you should be spending more time with Bart and he wouldn't be so diabolical. So he spends time with him and they have this tender moment and they hug, and that's when Bart wakes up screaming. The last one was If I Only Had a Brain. And that was the one where Mr. Burns put his brain in a robot, right?
He put Homer's brain in the robot, yeah.
Yeah, Mr. Burns... makes is watching the security feeds and makes a comment. We need a random firing to to put the fear into them, and he picks Homer Simpson, and then Homer gets a job as a grave digger and goes to sleep in the grave. So when Mr. Burns and Smithers go out to rob a grave later, they find him and just take him and put his brain in a robot, and then the robot just does the same things that Homer does, like these stories usually go. So, that's a pretty classic one. Alright, Treehouse of Horror 3. The first one in that was Cloud Without Pity. This is basically Talking Tina from the Twilight Zone. Like, it's a crusty doll that Homer buys from a shop, and there's a, funny interaction in the shop.
It's like Gremlins, the don't feed it after midnight kind of thing. That's where they were getting that from.
So, he brings it home and pulls the string, and, it says, I love you to Bart, and then it says, I don't like you to Homer, and it's like, I'm gonna kill you. He's like, kill me with what? And he pulls a knife out from behind the couch, and then the whole episode is just, Homer and the crusty doll going at it, and then Marge calls the company that makes it, and the dude comes in, and it's like, oh, here's your problem, someone sent it to evil. King Homer is the next one, which was just King Kong, but with Simpsons characters. Dial Z for Zombies was the third one for that, and that one was your standard zombie bit where Lisa's sad about their pet being dead, and Bart finds this book of magic, so he's like, maybe there's something in here to raise it from the dead, and he ends up raising everyone else in the graveyard instead of the cat. And they have, they have the standard zombie bits. Like, the guy says, oh no, I'm not a zombie, but when in Rome. And then there's, I'm trying to remember, what was it that made them all go back? What was it made all the zombies go back to graves?
Didn't Bart get the book again?
Was that what it was? Oh yeah, they cast another spell,
Yeah.
and all the zombies go back, and you see two zombies go to get into the John Smith grave. He's like, "Hey, I'm John Smith. John Smith, 1882. My mistake." So that one was fun. Treehouse of Horror 4 had.
This was a play on Night Gallery at the beginning of it. Bart's talking about paintings and the stories deal with the paintings.
Oh, that's right. And at the beginning of each one, Marge comes out and says, this one's very scary. Don't, if you've got sensitive kids, they probably shouldn't watch it. Don't sue us in the morning. And the third one, they had Homer come out like Alfred Hitchcock in the beginning to do it instead. So the first segment was The Devil and Homer Simpson, which is basically, Homer's out of donuts, says he'd sell his soul for a donut, and so the devil comes out.
The Devil's Flanders.
The Devil's Flanders. And he's like, and he's like, do you want to think about this? He's like, do you have a donut or not? He's like, okay, here you go. And Homer does this thing where it's like, if I don't eat this last bit, then I don't owe you my soul technically, do I? He's like, technically. He's like, ha! And then later that night, Homer's tired and eats it. So, Homer gets trapped, and then the Simpsons are like, wait, shouldn't he have a trial? And the devil's like, fine. And for his torture, Homer is fed, like, all the donuts ever, and he just eats them all. And then the whole thing at the end is, on a picture of their wedding day, Homer wrote that his soul belonged to Marge. So the jury finds that his soul belongs to Marge and not the devil, so he's off the hook. The second one for that one was Terror at 5.5 Feet, which is them doing the William Shatner bit of the Twilight Zone movie with Bart in a school bus. There was this little gremlin thing messing with the bus, and he, like he said, there's a gremlin outside, and you see an old lady and a gremlin. Or it might have been an old man.
No, that was an old man.
Yeah, it was an old man in a Okay, so back to finishing this. The third episode from the third bit from Treehouse of Terror 4 was Bart Simpson's Dracula, which I think that one was a simple. It was Mr. Burns was a vampire.
Yeah, Mr. Burns was a vampire. They went to his weekend home in Pennsylvania.
Yeah. Which, if you go by the theories of where the Simpsons Springfield is, that's a long-ass drive. Because the idea is that it's in Minnesota.
They never really say.
They never say, but one of the big things is that they have both K and W radio stations.
Okay.
And there's only 2 states that have that, Minnesota and Louisiana.
Okay.
But anyway, Mr. Burns is a vampire. Bart and Lisa go down, Lisa thinks he's a vampire. Bart and Lisa go down to his basement, find all these coffins, and Bart has this great line about, it's the same as Grandpa's funeral, Grandpa's rest home. And then I think Bart does get bitten.
Yeah. He sees this lever, it says Super Fun Happy Slime. He goes, why not? And he does that, and he goes down to the vampires, and they bite him. And then there's a little homage to Salem's Lot. He's trying to get Lisa to join him, and he's tapping outside of her window. And come to find out, Grandpa comes in there and goes, quick, we must kill the boy. And you're like, how'd you know he was a vampire? He's a vampire? Ah! And he runs.
And it's like, the whole family is vampires, and they go to attack her, and then they just stop and turn and go, Happy Halloween, and start doing
there's more to that.
Was there?
Yeah, they went to go kill Mr. Burns, and they're like, oh, okay, you have to kill the head vampire, and then all the vampires will die. Well, they killed him, and Bart was still a vampire. And she goes, "Wait, I thought he was a head vampire." And Marge goes, "I'm the head vampire." And Lisa goes, "Mom?" She goes, "Well, I have a life outside this house, And then all of the Simpsons are vampires, and Grandpa, he has the vampire teeth, but then they fall out. And then they go to bite her, and then that's when they go, "Happy Halloween, everybody!" And then they do the do from Charlie Brown.
Yeah.
So
that's Treehouse of Terror 4.
4. Treehouse of Horror.
Treehouse of Horror 4. Okay. Treehouse of Horror 5 is
my favorite.
What I think is the best of the ones I've seen. By far. Although the 1 through 4 by no means bad, 5 is really good. And it starts with The Shining. And the reason for this is that they're basically doing The Shining, and they have a bunch of the normal stuff from The Shining, and then they come to this point where groundskeeper Willie is talking to Bart, and then he thinks, "Oh, it's too bad, your dad's gonna go crazy and kill everyone." And Bart's like, "Wait, what was that?" He says, "Oh, you can hear my thoughts. You've got The Shining. You mean The Shining? Shh, you want to get sued?" And it's basically The Shining, but with some funny stuff. Like, instead of all work and no play makes Johnny a dull boy, it's
no beer and no TV make Homer go crazy.
Yeah. And Homer and I forget his name. Homer's voice actor. I don't remember. But the guy who does Homer did a great job with that. Like, he did a lot of crazy stuff that was really funny. And then eventually the way they get him is they're outside with one of those little TV, like handheld TV things, and they're all just gathered around it, and then they freeze, and then something comes on, they're like, "Change the channel!" "I can't, I'm frozen." So that one is good, and it's really well done. I would say the best bit out of all the ones I've seen. The next one was Time and Punishment. That was the detention one, right?
No, Time and Punishment was where Homer got his hand stuck in the toaster.
Right. No, that's right. The next one was the detention one.
Yeah.
So Time and Punishment, Homer gets his hand stuck in a toaster somehow. And he flails around, banging on the walls and stuff, gets it off. And then, goes to fix it. But he messes up fixing it. He's like, "Now time for a test toast." And he, puts the toast in, hits the button, and then he travels back in time to, dinosaur times. And he's sitting there like, "Okay, I need to remember what my dad said at my wedding. If you ever go back in time, don't touch anything, or you'll destroy the universe."
In ways you can't imagine.
So, which odd thing to say at someone's wedding, but okay. But anyway.
Paul Simpson.
Yes, it is. So, basically the rest of the movie is Homer goes back in time, does something, whether by trying to not touch anything or by deliberately bashing everything in sight. He keeps changing the world. One time it was where Flanders
was basically the dictator
for
the whole world.
Flanders was the dictator. There was one where everything seemed normal. There was one where they were rich, wasn't it?
Yeah, there was one they were rich. Patty and Selma were dead, and Homer asked Marge for a donut, and she goes, "Donut? What's a donut?" And then he flips
freaks out and leaves, and then as soon as he walks out the room, it starts raining donuts.
And she goes, "Oh, it's raining again." There's one where Lisa and Bart are giants, and they just pull the top of the house off. Because there's a bug that looks like Dad. Let's kill it. Okay. Shh.
Yeah, it's just wacky time travel shenanigans.
Yeah.
And I think that the last one is everything looks normal, but then everyone's got lizard tongues.
He's like, okay, whatever.
It's close enough. Alright, so the last one for 5 is Nightmare Cafeteria, and this is where kids start going to detention and they don't come back.
they send some of them into the cafeteria because the detention room is overcrowded.
Yeah.
Jimbo, the school bully, decides that he's going to trip the lunch lady who's carrying this big pot of marinade.
Yeah.
And it lands on him, and Principal Skinner comes up to him and is like, and then he goes, report to such and such or whatever. Then the next day they're having sloppy Jimbos.
Yeah.
So
and then
they're eating the children.
Yeah, and then shortly after that they get what's his
Uter, the
Uter.
German kid.
Uter, and they have German Day with lederhosen and everything. And it's just it's your standard Soylent Green is people kind of thing.
Yeah.
But it was pretty well done. All three of these were pretty well done. I believe I've seen all three of the ones from 5 on a top 10 Treehouse of Horror segments list. So I mean, in my opinion, my thoroughly uneducated opinion, Treehouse of Horror 5 was the best of the 5 that I've seen so far.
Treehouse of Horror 5 is always my favorite. The Shining is my favorite Treehouse of Horror segment of all time. And I've been watching for years.
And I don't know if this made it to the original recording, but I've never seen... Actually, no, it didn't make it to the original recording because we missed that bit. But I've never seen The Shining, but I still appreciated The Shining because I could see what they were... what they were doing, and I could see the craftsmanship of it, so to speak.
You haven't seen The Shining, but you know the basic gist of it,
yeah,
so you understood.
Yeah, I know what happens,
yeah.
Kind of. I know that, the little boy had no idea they were making that movie.
But that was Treehouse of Horror 1 through 5.
Yeah, that's the first 5. We're going to do another one for...
6 through 10?
Yeah, 6 through 10.
Yeah.
And we'll just try to, do a video every